be okay. Target found.
Hello guys, it's Prajna. Welcome and welcome back to another Division 2 video. So today, I'm going to break down one of the most powerful PVE builds in the game. This is a build with ridiculously high survivability, and while still being able to deal out an insanely high amount of weapon damage, it makes it an excellent option for solo players. This build also takes advantage of one of the most powerful and well-balanced gear sets in the Division 2. It's a very simple but extremely powerful PVE build. So if you struggle getting through higher difficulty content like heroic or legendary, then you just might favor this. Also, if you guys would like to see a PvP version of this build, then stick around till the end because I'll show you a great setup for the Darkzone. Okay guys, without further ado, let's get started. Okay guys, so this is a 4-piece Heartbreaker setup, and Heartbreaker is very similar to the Striker gear set, whereas you will need to build stacks. So real quick for those who don't know, with 4 pieces of the Heartbreaker gear set equipped, you will get 15% assault rifle and LMG damage, 15% weapon handling, and for 4 pieces, you get the Heartstopper talent. So with Heartstopper, headshots apply a pulse to the enemy for 5 seconds. Weapon hits on pulsed enemies add a stack of 1% bonus armor and 1.1% weapon damage to pulsed enemies, stacking up to 50 times. So at full stacks, that's about 50% added bonus armor and 55% increased weapon damage, right? And since I'm using the Heartbreaker vest, the max Heartstopper stacks gets bumped up from 50 to 100. So having the Heartbreaker vest helps tremendously with damage and survivability. And for the backpack, I'm using the named Bellstone Liquid Engineer bag for the perfect Bloodsucker talent to add a little bit more survivability. And for those who didn't know, Perfect Bloodsucker will basically grant you 12% bonus armor per kill, stacking up to 10 times. But don't feel like you need to use this backpack because it isn't mandatory. Personally, I like to run this bag when I'm doing legendary missions for extra survivability, and if I'm just running heroic, I'll use the Fenris backpack with Vigilance, which is actually a great alternative. But if you don't have the named Liquid Engineer backpack, then you can either go with the, Memento bag. The Memento bag is great because it adds weapon damage and bonus armor, but the only downside is that you will need to build up stacks. Or you can get a Fenris Group AB bag and roll Bloodsucker on it if you want a little bit more survivability, or if you want more damage instead, then roll Vigilance. For the primary weapon, I'm using the Kingbreaker, which is the perfect weapon to use for Heartbreaker, mainly because of the talent it comes with, Perfect Flatline. And it also has a very high base damage, but this talent basically amplifies weapon damage to pulsed enemies by 20%. And remember, weapon hits to pulsed enemies will only increase your overall weapon damage and bonus armor if you have a 4-piece Heartbreaker gear set equipped. So the Perfect Flatline talent on the Kingbreaker really complements Heartbreaker. Okay, for the secondary weapon, I'm using the rock and roll named ACS-12 shotgun because similarly to Striker, it also helps build Heartbreaker stacks incredibly fast. But here's the thing, there are a few ways for pulsing an enemy and building stacks. So remember, one way is by getting a headshot, and the other way is by using the linked laser pointer attachment that you get from the Technician Weapon Specialization tree. And this is the main reason I'm using the Technician Specialization. The linked laser pointer, for those who don't know, is an attachment that goes under long rail weapons and allows you to pulse an enemy while aimed down sight, so it makes it a lot easier to keep the enemy pulsed, as opposed to having to land headshots. This is actually my preferred way for getting Heartbreaker stacks, but Technician isn't required, so feel free to use whatever weapon specialization you'd like here. Gunner is another great option. So if you don't mind having to aim for headshots, then you can use whatever weapon specialization suits you better. For the mask, I'm using the Coyote mask for the increased crits that will ultimately increase my overall damage out. So for those who don't know, this mask will grant you increased critical hit chance and damage based upon the distance you are from the enemy. So the further you are, the more critical hit damage you will get. A good alternative to the Coyote's mask is the Catharsis mask. The Catharsis mask has gotten a small buff, so it's a bit better than before. This mask will not only grant you increased weapon damage upon taking damage, but it will also drop a healing cloud periodically that heals 5% of your max armor for 10 seconds. But if you don't have the Catharsis mask either, then try a Fenris Group AB or a Walker Harris mask. Either of those two will work fine. What's great about this build is that it's very practical and you don't really need to do much farming to set it up. For the attributes on the gear pieces, you want to roll critical hit damage or chance. However, if you decide to use the Coyote mask, then remember not to fully cap out your critical hit chance at 60%. Just make sure to leave room for about 10%. So if I were you, I wouldn't exceed 50%. So I'm at 44% critical hit chance and 115% critical hit damage. So when I'm fighting, I'll get an extra 10% critical hit chance from the Coyote mask. Okay, so for the gear pieces, I have critical hit damage rolled on both the holster and knee pads and critical hit chance rolled on the vest and gloves. So what you can do is roll either critical hit chance or damage, depending on what you need. For the skills, I like to use the Ballistic Crusader Shield and Decoy, but when I'm solo, I'll switch to the Reviver Hive just in case I go down. Okay, so guys, here is an excellent Heartbreaker setup for PvP. I'm going to give you two versions for you to try. So this is one version that works great. The Centurion Scabbard holster is nice and adds a 20% rate of fire and weapon damage buff, as well as an increased mag size and reload speed by 50% after swapping between weapons. However, these bonuses will only be applied one by one. So you will basically get the buffs in this order. Now I'm using the Heartbreaker backpack because it will actually increase total bonus armor gained per stack from 1 to 2%, which helps out with survivability. And having survivability in PvP is essential. For the gloves, I'm using Cheska for the extra 8% critical hit chance, which helps a lot because the critical hits on Heartbreaker builds tend to be very low. Now this second version is also great and it's actually my preferred version to use. So with this version, I'm using the Catharsis mask with the Picaro's holster. Also, I forgot to mention that having the Heartbreaker backpack and vest equipped performs really well in PvP, so I suggest wearing them both. Heartbreaker is a very powerful gear set to use for PvP. However, it's extremely easy to counter. All someone has to do is wear a 100% pulse resistance build, and fighting a pulse resistance player with Heartbreaker will render the gear set useless, because Heartbreaker is a pulse reliant gear set. But nevertheless, Heartbreaker is still very fun to use in PvP. But I recommend using this version if you have the Catharsis mask. The Catharsis mask works really well in PvP fights because it provides heals and it will increase your weapon damage when you take damage. This is Prajna and I hope you guys found this video helpful. Thank you so much for watching, and if you're new to the channel, welcome and consider subscribing. If you're already a subscriber, welcome back, and if you have any questions, feel free to leave them for me in the comment section. Good luck farming, and if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like, and like always, keep it cool, keep it classy, and see you in the next video. Peace out.